Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State, a Penn State football show presented by FanDuel. Play your game. I'm Tom Hannifan. He is Nittany Lion legend, former Penn State and NFL wide receiver Deon Butler, sitting in for Justin King. There is a lot to get to in the world of Penn State football since we last left you. Many of you are still ticked off at me for not liking the hiring process that we just got done with, but the silver lining is that Penn State has hired a very, very good football coach in Matt Campbell from Iowa State. Deon, this is the first time you and I have gotten to talk since Campbell was officially hired. He was officially introduced earlier on this week. Pat Kraft spoke, Terry Smith spoke, all sorts of stuff this week. So first things first, what is your feeling on the hire of Matt Campbell?
Right, he's a guy that I think, we knew about his name early on in the process before, to your point, the process kind of seemed to unravel a little bit from the outside looking in. And even in that early portion, it was like, well, here's a good guy, right? He's a good candidate. You know, it seems like he fits. So to be able this late in the process, get him, I think is something that, I think we should be, happy about. I mean, me personally, looking forward to it because I think one of the big things that, we've talked about, or that people have kind of, one of the big national, I guess, headlines of that is a guy that has done so much with so little. And so definitely interested to see, with the more resources that you have, obviously kind of having that blue collar field that fits what Penn State is about, where we kind of talk about, let's get back to Penn State football. And so it fits that mold. So definitely one of those hires where initially I'm liking it, and hopefully I think Nittany Nation will be behind him, and just looking forward to him understanding what Nittany Nation is all about and get behind him and seeing the support that he's going to have, because once again now he's a Nittany Lion, and the fans and the former players, all of us are going be there to support.
It really genuinely does feel like the fans are behind this, the vast majority. As I mentioned, when I covered this last week, I was ticked off about the process that Penn State went through for 54 days and the debacle that had been created in part by Pat Kraft, and a lot of other factors went into that. But I want to reinforce, this is an outstanding hire. I'm very excited that Penn State has gotten Matt Campbell. I'm just not forgetting about the BS we all just went through to get to this point. And it does kind of put you in this situation of, well, why don't we just do this in the first place? And there was the element, Deon, about, well, Penn State couldn't find his contact information, or they had the wrong contact information, because how many Matt Campbells probably exist in the known universe? A billion, right? So it's an interesting path that we took to get here. But based on everything we know about him, the teams that he's put on the field at Iowa State, the limits that he has had on NIL being next to nothing, the recruiting space that Iowa State, their footprint was also next to nothing. So what he was able to accomplish is pretty impressive. And the way he spoke earlier on this week, his introductory press conference, there's the old adage, did he win the press conference? 1,000%. Hell yes, he won the press conference. To see the emotion for him taking a job of Penn State's caliber, you could feel it. It was very genuine. I know there's plenty of fans that were excited to hear Matt Campbell use the name Joe Paterno, reference Matt Millen as a mentor, talk about Todd Blackledge and Kyle Brady, and reference the past, but then also be looking towards the future and being prepared to have a bigger budget to all of a sudden accomplish all the things that he's dreamed of. And it just felt like a guy who's very down to earth, embracing the concept of change as well, Deon. And that's what this entire year really has been about for Penn State football, is drastic change. And you're getting a guy who genuinely cares about people. The concept of success with honor, I think, matches his DNA. And at the same time, the ability to move forward in this modern era of college football. Is it going to work out? Time will tell. It is way too early to tell. But it just feels like a good fit at this point. And I think you can comprehend this. Obviously, it's so difficult having played in the non-NIL era and understanding maybe players and coaches that came onto the staff when you were there, and even in the National Football League. Like, How easy is it to identify when somebody just fits or doesn't fit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it shows itself rather quickly, right? You'll start to see it in the interactions with the players. And then obviously he's the coach, right? He's going to set the tone for where he wants this program to go now. And you talk about success with honor and those type of things, right? So getting the right type of guys here. I think it is one thing that you touched on to be very interesting is right now he has a much larger recruiting base that he has to deal with, that he has the access to, which is one, great, but it's two, it's like, okay, he hasn't done this before. So let's, how is this going to work out? Obviously have all the confidence that, he'll be able to handle it, but it'll be an exciting thing to see when you're like, wow, now I'm like 3-4 states away and actually recruiting people and things like that. So I think that'll be interesting. But, back to your question, I think those things show themselves pretty early as far as like players and parents, as far as, is this the type of guy that I want to play for, right? We just kind of saw a really good example with Coach Terry. This is a guy, it was clear guys want to play for. That didn't take a long time to figure that out, even on the outside looking in. So I think he'll have that opportunity as the, off-season work starts, as this transfer portal starts, and he gets to kind of hit the ground running pretty much as far as showing up, showing who he is, what he's about. And I think, like I said, he'll find the right fit of guys. And I think that will just kind of really play itself out.
Going from a recruiting base that meant a car ride or a trip on a train to all of a sudden a national recruiting reach. Penn State has players from Florida to California, some from Texas, obviously all over the Northeast footprint, but still there will be a challenge that comes with that, an acclimation process that comes with that. So interested to see how that works out, but that is such a long-term play at this point. This is going to be something that Penn State is going to not really fully comprehend until 2027, 2028. And you and I have talked about it, that the class of 2026 for Penn State, the term class is far-reaching. It's minimal. You're going to have a mass exodus in the transfer portal. And I think that's the thing Penn State fans have to be prepared for. I think there's this feeling that, well, we expect to have these guys who played this year back and they performed and they're underclassmen or something like that. They'll definitely be here next year. There is no guarantee of that. And it's not because Matt Campbell's a bad coach or they're put off by him or something like that, but you have no idea how much of the existing roster is actually going to be retained. And you're already starting to see the likes of Zane Durant has opted out for the Pinstripe Bowl. We'll get to Penn State versus Clemson a little bit later on here. Zane Durant's going off to the National Football League. Zane Durant worked his ass off for years and played at a high level this year. He's earned that right. I'm not crying or upset on the fact that Zane Durant is missing the Pinstripe Bowl. But now it's like, okay, which starters, which second and third line guys want to stay, have the incentive to stay? The money's a part of it. And at the same time, do they just want a new start somewhere? Do they want to go with a coach they already know somewhere else? Like, I think that's the element of this that is going to hit Penn State and Penn State fans like cold water in the face here pretty soon. So it's just bracing for what is about to transpire here in the next couple of weeks. One thing I do want to get your opinion on is Pat Kraft also spoke earlier on this week. Clearly, he was fired up about Matt Campbell. He met the man at the tarmac and was hugging him and all over him at the airport. And Pat Kraft, I appreciate, he acknowledged the leaked audio that came out from the meeting of him with Penn State football players very recently. He was talking a lot of trash about Michigan and Oregon, especially Ohio State, and was trying to explain the process, but also you could feel how strongly Pat Kraft cares about this program, cares about Penn State, wants to win, doesn't want to settle for second best. And that was before the Matt Campbell hire came out. So Pat Kraft acknowledged his shortcomings earlier on this week. I respect that. I appreciate that. But what's your overall feeling and trust in Pat Kraft and the program at this point in time?
Right. I think, I think you touched on it, just kind of the process seemed very loose, right? And I say the process of hiring, right? Because it seems like we didn't really have a great process, or, we, to your point, right, we couldn't get in hold of the guy. And man, it's got to be a lot of money being spent on these search firms. Like, we can find a guy. We can find a contact number. I don't care if it's Bob Smith. If we looking for the correct Bob Smith, this is D1 football. We're talking about millions of dollars, and we can't, so stuff like that gives you a little bit of pause. But you know what? The other part is that, right, you see the human side of it where, right, he owned up to, his shortcomings and different things. And I honestly believe, right, we're not, obviously nobody's perfect, but at least how do you react to these things? How do you come back from them like that? So I think once again with the hire, I think he fits as far as the grittiness. Even if it's by limitations, he hasn't had a whole bunch to work with. So he has that, hey, I can, blue collar feel of I don't need the flashiest of stuff. We're here to play ball. Kind of, gives just that grittiness. I see now when I feel I look at Indiana and I see Cignetti and they're just, we're here to play ball. Right. We here to play ball. I don't care about all this other flashy stuff, not to compare him to him, but just that overall feel about we're here to play football. We're here to win, successful honor, like you're saying like that. So I think we still landed on the right guy. Maybe how we got there, the process was a little fumbled, but, I believe that still landed on the right guy. So for that part, I give Kraft credit for that. And then honestly, even with the leaked audio, anybody that's been on a football team, basketball team, D1, it's crap like that gets talked about behind closed doors all the time.
Yeah.
So just the fact that, it got aired out, it's going to live on other people's board. Trust and believe Michigan going to put it up, Oregon going to put it up, believe it. But once again, if you've got a coach, right, that I'm thinking is Matt Campbell, and you're just all right, so we did that. What? And we're here to play ball. We said it, and here we go. Okay. So it's just one of those things, right? So I think that'll fit, and I think that'll work itself out. But, that part doesn't really, bother me much. But I think he definitely still landed on the right guy. And, so for that part, have trust in that we're headed in the right direction, got a good fit, and let's just kind of really get behind him, and hopefully it works out.
State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today.
So now this churn of the staff and the roster begins. I already talked about Zane Duran has opted out for the Pinstripe Bowl. Ty Howell has left the program. He is off to Virginia Tech, no surprise, to be their new offensive coordinator. So congratulations to Ty Howell. Obviously did a tremendous job with the tight ends and was a co-offensive coordinator for Penn State. So the work begins for Matt Campbell putting together his staff. The stabilizing presence, however, is the fact that Terry Smith has been retained by Penn State football, is staying on the staff, is still going to be an instrumental member of this staff, is still going to be a huge part of Penn State's ability to recruit going into the future. And that work is ongoing to attempt to salvage 2026. You're going to be looking at the transfer portal heavily for 2026 because we have no idea how significant that two-way traffic is going to be in and out of the portal. So Terry staying on. I feel tremendously comfortable with Terry Smith staying on. I am glad to see that he's staying on. How do you feel?
Oh, absolutely. Right. So that's one of the things you talked about earlier, as far as guys leaving the program and not knowing what's here and NIL and all these different things. And I mean, Coach Terry, once again, is a guy that people want to play for. So if you have that stabilizing presence, I think that gives you the best chance at, okay, so the guys that we don't know if they're going to leave, like on defense, at least for sure. Mm-hmm. Here's a guy that you know is going to be around. Here's a guy that you just campaigned for this hard. I think that's our best bet to keep most guys here. Like if they want to leave, right, they'll end up leaving. But I think the best bet is like, hey, Coach Terry's here, so you know exactly what you're getting. This is a guy that you really want to play for. So I definitely think that's a big hire. Keeping him on the staff, obviously he has those recruiting connections all throughout Pennsylvania and the East Coast, up and down, probably some more than, I give him credit for. But that's another thing, right, that ties into what we talk about with the new coach and not knowing, this area as well, or having a bigger recruiting base. Now you have a coach like Coach Terry, who he's been doing this. He's established. He knows, the ins and outs. He knows who to talk to get to certain kids. So I think that's definitely very, very instrumental. And I think that's why it was such a big deal in announcing that and making it known. Also, from a standpoint of loyalty and things like, hey, here's a guy that we really believe in. He stuck around. He did what, a lot of people wouldn't or didn't think could be done, like salvaging this season. And, now we're going to reward him for that. We're not a program that just says, oh, well, thanks and goodbye. Right. So.
Yeah. And you had a feeling that there was a strong chance Terry Smith was going to be retained in all this, but it was the uncertainty of it. And there was interest from Memphis. There was interest from UConn in Terry Smith possibly becoming their next head coach. But at the same time, and you've lived this, if you're a coach and you are where you want to be, picking up and moving, isn't that intriguing? And especially for Terry Smith, where his family is so entrenched in Penn State football's history, you can understand him continuing to serve. And that's what he said from the very beginning in the lead up to the Iowa game, was saying, I'm here to serve Penn State football. So I think that's a massive win for Penn State football. So looking at Matt Campbell, he's getting 8 years, roughly $70 million guaranteed. So that's something that Penn State fans, when things start to go south, if they do go south at any point, I'm sure we're going to hear about that at some point in the future, but we're going to choose to focus on the positives on this episode of State of State. $30 million being allotted for NIL, $17 million being allotted for assistant coaches, coordinators, that sort of thing. So curious to see what Matt Campbell does defensively. The 3-3-5 that he's traditionally run at Iowa State, would that work for Penn State this year? Penn State going with a 4-2-5 as its primary set. Plenty of struggles on the defensive side of the ball that Jim Knowles had to adjust with. Plenty of struggles on the offensive side of the ball that Andy Kotelnicki had to adjust with. Their futures, that's still a question mark. So we have to monitor all those things. Meanwhile, Penn State is going to the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl at Yankee Stadium in New York City. And it'll be Penn State up against Clemson and Dabo Swinney. And this was the preseason number 2 in Penn State and the preseason number 5 in Clemson. This is not where anybody expected them to be, but you got 6-6 versus 7-5. Deon, I have no idea how we got here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, right, you got two teams where the rails kind of fell off during the season, right? But obviously still from a talent standpoint, teams are very good, right? Unfortunately, right, you're probably going to see a lot of guys that won't play in this bowl game that, were the reason these teams were preseason top 5 and, and ranked number 2 as well. So, but I mean, you still like it from just the point of like, this is Clemson versus Penn State. You don't see this often, right? One of the things also, like you said, you got second string guys, guys that weren't able to play during the season. Here's a moment. Here's a chance for you to, whether you're going to stay, put on some good film, whether you're going to leave, you put on some good film, but you get an opportunity for 4 quarters to be in some really meaningful football. And I think that should really show up and should be something exciting to watch as we go into this bowl game. And yeah, definitely, like you said, it's 2 teams where, we were talking about college football playoffs, not, the Pinstripe Bowl. So it's kind of 2 teams that had the same trajectory during the season and trying to salvage it. So hopefully, for our sake, let's get a win. Let's go into the off season of, like you're saying, uncertainty, but let's get this last win and then let's get the thing rolling.
Terry Smith will coach the Pinstripe Bowl before the Matt Campbell era officially begins as head coach. So I am fascinated to see what Penn State puts on the field there. We've talked about it before. My expectation is you could see maximum 4 out of 5 offensive line starters. You could see Nick Singleton and Katron Allen potentially selecting to opt this out on the offensive side of the ball. You could possibly see on the defensive side of the ball, we've already talked about Zane Durant. Denied Ennis Sutton, wouldn't shock me if he was opting out. Zakee Wheatley, wouldn't shock me if he was opting out. And I say this from a standpoint of what these players can potentially accomplish in the National Football League where they can be drafted. It would make sense to me that those guys would elect to do that. Where their heart is, we're going to find out. And that's not a negative, Deon, and it's a different thing than when you played, is that the concept of opting out, not playing in a bowl game when you were playing, that probably never crossed a lot of people's minds. It was probably the worst decision you could possibly make, actually, if I can't imagine how Joe Paterno would have reacted to something like that. So we're going to see, but then the team that takes the field at the Pinstripe Bowl, in a game in which Penn State currently, according to FanDuel, is the underdog by 3.5 points to Clemson, it's so difficult to be like, what's the expectation? Just to see the effort, because as I just said, the transfer portal is probably going to be a major part of the story for Penn State football in 2026. So it's kind of hard to sit there and be like, we're looking at the future. It's kind of, Deon, you're looking at the right now, and everything else, TBD, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're not going to know who's playing, right? And probably a decent amount of names where you're like, oh, yeah, I remember them from spring ball.
Right, yeah.
So it's just like one of those things where, yeah, I don't think that's going to be everybody that will be on this team moving forward. But, to your point, what you're looking for is just the effort. While you're here, what type of football players are you? And, at this point is personal with, guys, whether they're deciding to stay or to leave. Things like we've mentioned before, this is still your tape. You can't put out bad film and be like, well, that's because I knew I was leaving. Well, okay, so you're a guy who only plays when you want to play? It's not going to fly ever, anywhere. So still, whoever lines up and goes out there, right, you've got to put together good film. You should obviously have some pride about you that you're a football player and I'm going to beat the guy in front of me. So I'm looking forward to just like new guys having opportunities. And then honestly, with new guys having opportunities, you don't really have you shouldn't have the audacity to be like, man, I barely played all year and I'm going to go out here and not give effort. Like you should be like, actually, and that's just what I think I told you on the last one. I was like, these should be guys that should have the mindset, this is why I should have been playing all year. Like, let me have 300 yards this game. And I told y'all, let me get 4 pancake bucks. I should have been playing. And this is your chance to get, like I said, those meaningful game reps and those things where you can show that. So hopefully the effort should be there from whoever decides to actually play, should be out there ready to ball out.
Hope so. Saturday, December 27th at 12 p.m. Eastern, live on ABC, Penn State versus Clemson in the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. The irony is that the first bowl game James Franklin got to at Penn State was the Pinstripe Bowl. So it's just funny. Time is a flat circle. To wrap up here, Deon, this hire feels really, really good for Penn State. It feels very, very strong. But I want to temper expectations for fans. And I know I can come off as a pessimist, very negative as a realist. I'm trying to be real about this entire situation. We have no idea what 2026 is going to look like. This is going to be a 3 to 4 year wait and see type of process in my mind. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, right, it would be great if, you hit on the transfer portal and can kind of like maintain stuff. But I mean, I think we got a live look at that this past year with even all the talent we had with Coach Knowles on defense. Like, it takes time to adjust to systems for guys to, come in and, right, obviously you'll have your asterisks. Matt Campbell, right, comes in, does a great job. But majority of the time as a defense as a whole, it takes time because it's so much, and I mean, it's offense too. There's so much communication that's involved, right? Like, obviously, there's a lot of individual accolades and things like that, but like to win as a team as a whole, you have to be on a line and sync. And that's why, it's so important we talk about those off-season workouts, because that's when you start to get those little nuances where, hey, I already know that he knows I'm going to do this. I'm going to just give him that signal when we see 3x1 or XYZ, whatever it is. So those things take time. And right, obviously, he's a head coach, so the direction of the program to get where he wants to get to is going to take some time. Obviously, we hope it's, faster than slower. However, it will take some adjustment. And I think he's got to get his guys in. To your point, he's got to figure out what offensive scheme, what defensive scheme. And then guys will start to come in based off of, hey, this fits me or this doesn't fit me and I need to leave. But, all of those things are going to be an adjustment period. And, even obviously now we're just putting together the coaching staff. So I definitely think it'll be, a little bit. I don't think we'll fall off the map, but will we be, top tier? I would love us to be, but the expectation to me is just hopefully maintaining somewhere near the top half of that Big Ten. And then all it takes is, hey, guys, we're just a couple players where I just got here. And you can see we're still, on the heels of whoever's at the top, right?
The one positive thing is Penn State does not play Ohio State for 3 years. Penn State will play at Michigan next year. Penn State also does not play Oregon next year. Penn State will play USC, Washington, Wisconsin, Rutgers, Purdue, Minnesota, Northwestern, Michigan, Maryland, plus in the non-con, Marshall, Temple, and Buffalo. So that's the schedule in 2026. I'm not even going to start saying like, well, if they get this record or anything like that. There is so much unknown here. And I'm seeing a lot of Penn State fans on social media assuming X, Y, and Z players will stay. And then assuming Penn State could get X, Y, and Z players from Iowa State that will transfer here. And already we've seen how Matt Campbell has gotten a select group of coaches and staff members, front office. I guess I'll use front office in that respect. Staff members to follow him from Iowa State. So a general infrastructure is still in place. He's brought his old offensive line coach. So there's plenty of that is going to happen inevitably. And this is just all big wait and see. It's exciting right now for sure. I'm going to be very clear. I'm excited about the Matt Campbell hire. I am just not forgetting about what happened the last 2 months. And now it's a big question of like, hey, where's this program going in the future? So right now it feels very bright. We're going to continue to monitor it here. He is Deon Butler. I'm Tom Hannifan. Thank you for tuning in for State of State, the Penn State football show presented by FanDuel.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by FanDuel.